Hello everybody and welcome to Talking Horticulture, and today we're going to be talking about compost and growing media, and this is our first podcast that we're in the flesh, not virtual anymore. So Michael's sitting across the table from me for the first time in over a year.
Yes, we're back after a short sabbatical of work that also gets in the way, because both of us of course are working full time still at the same time while squeezing these in. So the summer is obviously a busy season and we both get tied down with different things. So if you're wondering where we went, we didn't just abandon you. We're back with a new episode.
We'd like to say we're on our summer holidays, but unfortunately not. We've been busy out the door doing all the cutting and mowing and general work things. So but we're back on the horse now and we're going to start recording more episodes. So we hope you enjoy the upcoming podcast coming on. So as I said, today we're going to be talking about compost and growing media. And in the last while we've had a bit of trouble with the future of how we're going to be growing things going forward, in terms of how we're going to use a media that the board and Mona have stopped using peat or cutting peat. So our Peatmoss that we've all used for potting up or for in our garden, that's going to be a product that's going to be off our shelves. It's a big problem, Michael, isn't it?
It is a big problem for many of the nurseries at the minute who are getting hard to source large amounts of peat. Probably hasn't had as much of a knock-on effect maybe to a member of the public or someone trying to get a bit of pot and compost. You can still find many of the leading brands on your shelf when you go in, and you're still getting your 2-for-1 deals, and all of them are still available. But for someone who wants to buy a very large quantity of it now, it's getting much more difficult to source. One thing, and it's like the peat briquettes, which are also getting hard to source. The unfortunate part about them is that they're getting brought in from Germany, and that's another road that we don't want to go down either.
So what Board and Mona are kind of doing is they've gone from the brown to green strategy, where they are stopping all cutting of their peat off the bog in Ireland, and they're going to green it. They're flooding them again, aren't they? They're going to make them into back for nature, I suppose.
So they reckon. That's what they. Well, what's left of them. If you drive around the country, they're very well harvested as it is, and I know they're planning on putting wind turbines onto some of them as well, which that's going to be controversial as well in its own right for people living in those areas.
See, the last couple of years, that especially with COVID and the lockdowns and stuff like that, the emphasis on green infrastructure and places for people to go, and now at not only climate change being a big factor in Board and Mona stop using peat, having an area for people to go for a walk, to go and interact with nature. These areas are going to be brought back to nature, and like Michael said, put in wind turbines as well, and put in boardwalks for people to interact with them. So it's going to be a totally different change to the landscape.
So for you to go in now and, well, in the future, to buy a bag of Peatmoss or potting compost is going to be a little bit harder, and some of the products that are coming to the market is the likes of the recycled products, which is your products that are recycled from, say, green waste or food waste and that sort of thing, and they're heated up and blended up and chopped up, and gives you out something that may look slightly similar to compost.
Do you like using them?
Yeah, I don't mind them. They're okay. It depends on what I was doing with them. I grew potatoes in it one time. The stuff I got though had a lot of kind of some plastic waste in it, which was a problem. But it was old food waste is what it was, and it came in a very rich dark colour to it. And when I planted the potatoes in it, they really swelled up huge in it. They were kind of nearly put me off them. I was like, it didn't look natural looking. Yeah.
But this is the thing: is the inconsistent nature of compost from our brown bin waste or from the composters, that they're going to vary. That you could have a very nutrient-rich compost one week, and then maybe during the winter when there's not as much kind of rich kind of stuff going into the compost, that you're going to have a more leaner sort of compost. That your potatoes mightn't be as big then. Like
That's something they probably have to work with, though, wouldn't they? They'd have to be kind of testing their product lines as they're putting them out, as you would with a food product, where they would test it on a production line.
so this is the problem with compost, is that you have, because it's inconsistent. We'll be harking back to Peatmoss the whole time now, but peat was a great thing for the growers because they knew exactly each bag or each load was going to be consistent for them. So they knew how much food or how much nutrients they had to give their plants, or how much volume has to be used, because it's a very consistent, clean, weed-free product. Whereas compost, as you said, the nutrients level varies, but also the gradient can vary. Like you said, little bits of plastic, depending on what green composter is doing it. They can grade it at different levels, different kind of consistencies and stuff like that, which can be a problem as well.
Yeah, you get bits of wood and bits of stuff.
Wood chip and
but
stuff.
I think that's something we're just going to have to stomach.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to move along with that. If we get to remove the plastic waste out, but the rest of the stuff you'll just have to stomach as you move along with it. Unless they can add, if I'm sure you could test it for what's in it, and then if you maybe add a fertilizer through it, mix it into it, maybe, I don't know if that would work for.
So the big thing with plastics as well is that everything now is the big compostable wave. Everything that you buy plastic wise will say compostable or biodegradable. Every single product in the world is biodegradable, but it might take 1,000 years for it to biodegrade. So just because somebody says it's compostable, that lid of the coffee cup, for instance, the takeaway coffee cup, you put that in your compost bin, that's going to take years. It might compost.
I was going to say that to you. Yeah, coffee cup lids.
Like they will compost, but they won't do it quickly. Like they won't do it over one season.
No, it's like a coffee cup. If you get an actual coffee cup and soak it in water, it doesn't break up the way you think it's going to break up that easy.
No.
But that kind of stuff of segregating waste to get it down to really clean compost is going to be a problem. I don't know how they'll get around. And look, there is people getting around it at the minute. Like you can go in and buy recycled compost as it is at the minute off many good suppliers in the country. So
you mentioned there about the heat. So like the heat, when we talk about heat and composting, when in these big manufacturing facilities, they mound the green waste up into big furrows, and they constantly turn it to allow the heat to get in, to break it down, to allow the biodegrading to happen. And if that doesn't happen, there's a big problem. First of all, it doesn't break down quick enough, but you have a big problem with potential seeds, that if we don't get the heat up in the compost heaps, you're going to have a problem with seeds, whether that be your tomato seeds or something more problematic like mare's tail. Exactly. Harken back to the mare's tail, our favorite weed.
But in fairness though, can you and I know of someone who done it recently. They had a load of mare's tail in a flower bed. They piled it into a heap and brought it into a local green waste place and tipped it. So that was going into the green waste, and then you're buying it and you're putting it into your garden. So I know about this because I have a huge problem with it at home at the minute, and it's one of the hardest things I've ever tried to get rid of.
You still haven't got rid of it?
No, and that probably came in
definitely, like it definitely did.
It came in a pot plant, I would say, or somewhere like that. Now that came in.
Yeah, I had a similar problem in work. I bought in green compost from a company, and like that, mare's tail came up in spots where we spread the green waste around. And look, it is what it is. It's we're dealing with it, but like that, it's a problem I didn't have and now I do have. So you have to be really careful about who you're getting it from, and also you need to be very trusting of what they're taking in. Like, are they getting in lumps of big Japanese knotweed, chopping up and sticking in bindweed? These are the problems that come with it, and these are the issues that we're going to face. So like, probably if you're talking about getting good quality growing media, potting media, do it yourself.
Yeah, like what we're talking about there, we were saying about them turning it. for someone who is doing it at home, if you have a compost turner or whatever way you're doing it, it's just like doing that on a large scale. But if you're doing it yourself, at least you know what you're putting into it. Do you make compost at your
Yeah.
home, do you?
Yeah, I do it at home, and I also do it in work as well. And we would do the composting on a kind of a 3-year cycle.
So what about your composting at home? What you take? Let's start in your kitchen. What are you taking from your kitchen and putting into it?
So we will be taking everything from the kitchen, bar the likes of your bones, your chicken bones, your chicken carcasses. We wouldn't put any kind of meat products, raw products, any kind of dairy products like yogurts or anything like that. We wouldn't put any of that sort of stuff into it. But your potato peelings, your eggshells, your leftovers from dinner, all that sort of stuff would go into our compost. And then all the green waste from the garden, so all the herbaceous clippings from the garden, we would mix in our grass clippings, we would mix in leaves, all those sort of things. Now I say grass clippings is a bit of a contentious issue with grass clippings and compost. They don't go very well together, because grass clippings are a very nutrient rich kind of green waste that can cause problems with your compost. So it's very important to mix that in and have the right ratios. Your what do we call it? Like your green waste and your brown waste, that you have some stuff that's going to mix in with your grass to make sure it decomposes right.
What about vermin? You're saying you're putting your kitchen waste in. What are you storing it in then?
So yeah, rats can be a problem. Definitely, rats can be a problem, and we've dealt with them in numerous ways. One is put down poison and keep them under control that way. The other way is the standard compost bin. You just put it on a concrete base and a steel mesh in the bottom of it that they can't burrow up into it. And that's very important to keep them out of it, because they love the heat. It's basically a 5-star bed and breakfast for them, because they have heat, shelter and food all in one.
So are you putting it in, you just throw it in between pallets, is it, or do you have a bin?
We got from our county council a couple of years ago did the old days with the bin tags. We went down and we gave 3 bin tags, which were, I think, 20 quid, and we got these purpose-made compost bins. They're about 4 foot high, and you just lump all the stuff into it, and there's a little door at the front of it for taking out. So these are great. So we've 3 of them, and we'll just take them.
You don't have to turn it then?
We don't turn it. No. Now we'll throw the fork in it now and again and just kind of agitate it a little bit. But if you have the right level of green and brown mixes, that you have this kind of very wet nutrient green waste like your grass clippings or your kind of leafy material, plus the kind of harder stuff to break down like your leaves and your twigs or your herbaceous stuff, that kind of creates a nice kind of heat and balance to kind of break it down quickly.
So would you use that then general around the garden?
Yeah, we would primarily use the compost in the polytunnel around with our veggies and stuff like that.
And when it's in your composter, do you put water in on top of it, or is there a need to keep it wet?
Sometimes you can, like you see all these different composters that you can turn, and you can add water and you can add different fungi into it to make it speed up the process. But we don't add any water to it. We just kind of keep topping it up and empty it from the bottom and just agitate it every so often. I don't think there's a need, to be honest. I'm too busy to go out turning them.
Well, for me, when at home, I only compost garden waste. I don't compost food waste because of rats. It's too much of a problem, and became too much of a problem with it. It also, both of us we keep hens and chickens. Mm-hmm. I gave it up when I was ill one time, but back then it was another problem as well. Was vermin with that. So for people looking to either start composting, or if you already are, I think that's one of the main things to keep in mind, especially if you're living, maybe in a close bunch of houses, or you're living somewhere like that. You're going to bring that in around your house, so just to be mindful of that.
Yeah, because they will come.
And birds. You're going to get birds landing, especially if you're leaving the composter open, that you're not sealing it. You're going to get them landing on it, sort of stuff.
So if you are looking to do it at home, I'd be looking at, if you don't want to attract vermin into the area, definitely an enclosed unit, some sort of thing that is, you can buy these ones that are actually up off the ground and it's like a drum that you can turn and stuff like that. That is a very kind of clean and efficient way of doing it that stops the rats getting in. Because there's nothing worse, like you've probably done it as well, like taking out a bit of compost and then 6 rats jump out of you.
I did it the other day. It's been maybe about 2 weeks ago. I was pushing lawn grass.
Oh, lovely, yeah.
I kind of always try and squash the lawn grass into one heap. Like you said, I keep that separated out, and I squash it into one heap and I just let it go into soil. But I would squeeze it in with the bucket of the digger or whatever is around, whatever I have at hand to do it. And while moving the grass, I came across a rat's nest which was in the bottom of it. So yeah, that's not something they're like, at the end of the day they have somewhere to go as well. It's not that I'm anti-rat here, but I'm anti-rat when he's ratting beside my rat. You know, he's ratting beside my house. And
nobody wants a rat.
I don't want a rat as a neighbour.
No.
I'm happy when he's somewhere else, as somebody else's neighbour.
If you have it down the garden or something.
Yeah, he can move away. Like, I don't want to be friends with him. You know?
Another thing is wasps. Do you ever have wasps in your compost? Or in the tuft of grass like that? Like.
Yeah, funny how you mention it. In the same day, I hit a wasp's nest in the grass. So, yeah, you're going to come across them.
They get angry, don't they?
They were slightly annoyed about it, all right. I hit them with the bucket of the digger, and I didn't know they were there, but they were pissed. They were pissed, yeah.
Especially this time of year now. September is always a really, really bad time for wasps. And we hit one with the mower yesterday, and gee, they were angry. They were angry.
Yeah, like in a case like that, if you are outside or you're rooting up your compost, it's something to be very. It'd swarm on you there, or be in on top of you. Like I had a window to close of the cab I was in to seal myself away from them. But you take that, you're on a mower there, you might have no cab, or you're digging in the compost and you hit it. You know, that's something really to be mindful of. But
yeah. What did you like? So that's compost. That's what you do at home and what you can buy from the shops. You know any, like, have you heard of any of the other kind of alternatives that they're talking about for peat, like the likes of coir? Like that's something that would have been bandied around when we were in college. Coir is the husk of the coconut. That it's a byproduct of making coconut milk or making shelling coconuts. Obviously, it's the outer husk.
Bounties, you know.
All the bounties.
A lot of bounties there.
Yeah, exactly. But like that, this is a lovely clean product. It is very, very similar to peat. But if we're looking at kind of climate change problems, and if we're looking to stop harvesting all the peat in Ireland because it's damaging our ecosystem and the climate change, are we right in flying this around the world? Like, are we right to fly, like, how many coconut trees do you have in your garden?
Sure, what's the point in flying briquettes in from Germany? And you're telling a lad down in Longford that he can't have a job anymore and he can't work, and yet you're shipping a briquette in from Germany. Like that's to take an environmental box on a sheet for the EU. That's not. It looks good. Oh, we're stopping peat use. But you're shipping them in from abroad. Like.
So that was the first thing when Bord na Móna mentioned the peat being taken off the shelf, that they're not going to produce it and sell it in the country. So you saw on the Facebook groups and social media, peat from Lithuania, peat from Estonia, all this sort of stuff. So they were happy. Suddenly the market was gone in Ireland, but it was filled with a void of foreign peat. So like, I think we're fair to say we're not against them stopping peat being cut.
No, but I think that if they're going to fly it in from Germany, lash away. Just lash away here.
Yeah, like
why hammer us on all environmental things and let everybody else away with it? You know, it's like you know, you could go on at this forever. It's like fuel in cars. Why hammer us with high diesel prices when other places are getting away with cheap?
Yeah, like that's the problem, I think, as well. It's very good when you make these rules, but you need to have ironclad kind of backup procedures to stop where there is a hole in the market being flooded by other markets coming in from overseas. It's the same with the fishing. It's the same with every.
Same as everything.
Everything like you abide by the rules, and then someone else comes in to make a quick buck on you. So that would I'd be kind of mindful of, is that have we done it too quick? Like have they stopped it? Have they stopped the peat, the harvesting the peat for the briquettes and for the growing media? Have they stopped it too quick without having the right infrastructure in place? The replacement, is the compost there? Is the coir there? Or like are we doing the right thing?
I think people should be mindful of the fact that this is somewhere, there's a family somewhere who was reliant on Board Namona for a week's wages, and they've gone into work and been told that we're closing, and then they go home, they're sitting watching the news, and they see or they go down to their local shop and they see those briquettes or the peat from Germany and thinking, how come they can do it and we can't do it? So, I think people need to be mindful of that we can't, it's going cold turkey is fine, but well then we need to go cold turkey and stop all imports of it and stop it totally. But there's also the likes of all the nurseries. People need to think of them as well, and veg growers and all of them. Give them a solution. Find a way for them to don't you're just blanking them and saying sort it out yourself. Like that's really unfair. Like
it's not right. Like it's not right. So Board Namona have said that they did the last full harvest of their things in 2018 of the bogs. They did a partial harvest in 2019, and then they stopped altogether last year. And they're going to make briquettes up until 2024 by the sounds of things. But like that, are we going to is that a whole other industry again? I know we're kind of segueing into something slightly different, I suppose, but at the same time, you have to look at these knock-on effects. When you take a material off the market, it's going to have repercussions. Like people are going to lose their jobs, and the nurseries are really suffering. Like they don't know what they're going to do they?
No, and I to be honest with you, I'm not too sure myself what they could do. Someone there's a gap in the market there for someone to be able to create a really consistent product of
grown media.
Compost, yeah.
So one thing that's kind of coming down the stream is biochar, and again, this would have been something that would have been bandied about when we were in college 10 years ago. And it's so biochar it can be made from a very range of stuff. So the one that we would buy into work would be biochar made from the husks of sunflowers, so from the byproduct of sunflower oil. But they burn these husks and at a high temperature, low oxygen, and they essentially make charcoal. So this charcoal is then ground up into like this kind of powder, and they're using that as a potting media. So this is being heralded as one of these more kind of sustainable alternatives to peat.
Where did it come from though?
Well, this is from husks of sunflowers from France, I suppose. Again, like
from France.
Yeah.
But it flew here from France.
This is the problem, that we're a small island, and we're going to keep coming back to this, that any replacement, we've nothing really sustainable unless we look at growing some sort of biomass, like I don't know, trees or something like that.
You think of the amount of green waste you generate at home every day. It's not a huge amount. Really.
No.
It can be enough to sustain you.
Not at all.
But if you think of the amount of brown bins or whatever colour your compost bin is that the bin lorry comes and lifts every day, if you gather all that up, we generate a lot of that. Do you think there'd not be enough of that we could gather up?
I think so, yeah. I'd say there is, like there definitely is. And
as you said, we're a small island, so there has to be enough to...
Like that is, I know a few of the big companies, the big bin companies, Thornton's for instance, yeah, they would have a big composting facility, and they make beautiful, really.
Yeah, I've used their stuff, it's great.
Beautiful stuff now. And it's consistent, like I think they really allow it to mature.
I found that it was very weed free now, their product.
I think what they had on their side is they allowed They gave it time. They gave it time for the heat to go in and turn it. You'd be surprised how quick the turnaround of the likes of the big green waste guys.
They can do it. They can get rid of it very quick. All the machinery they have now and all that sort of stuff to chop it up and create it. But going back to what we were saying there, I don't think flying it from France either is the answer.
No, it's not the right answer.
You're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, and again, we're supplying, we're closing down a market here in Ireland, jobs in Ireland, to fill a void somewhere else.
Yes.
Money going out of the country. Is it the right thing to do? Probably not.
Like if you think of that knock-on effect of Bord na Móna don't supply peat, which doesn't supply a nursery, which loses jobs there, which doesn't supply a landscaper, which loses jobs there, doesn't supply a veg grower. He loses out to a big veg grower who gets the contract with a supermarket. You lose jobs there. Bord na Móna stops buying tractors. Now the local machinery dealers are not getting business there.
Yeah.
They're not getting the services that they got there to repair these machines. All of this knock-on effect that came from one decision.
And you think that we should be cutting away?
No, I don't. I think
you
if you drive down around some of the bogs, like they've cut them. Shit out.
There's very little.
Jesus, there's some of them. You drive down and the road could be 3 or 4 meters below it. But it's like saying in the morning, no more diesel and petrol cars. They're gone. You have to drive electric.
The alternative is not there.
The alternative is not there.
It is there, but very costly.
Yeah.
And it has knock-on effects like that. The electric cars are far too, like you buy 2 petrol cars for the price of an electric car.
You look at it at the minute, you can drive onto a petrol station forecourt and pick up a bag of pot and compost.
Yeah.
I've seen it, like. Yeah. So
coming in somewhere.
It's coming in somewhere. Like, don't forget that they harvested in the north as well. Yeah. They haven't stopped harvesting up there. And there's also private, and I passed one yesterday, private bogs which is being harvested commercially as well. So Bord na Móna might have stopped, but there is peat still being harvested in the country. So
I think it's fair to say that we can see the merit in why they're doing it, but you need to see a road out of it. There needs to be ample time to allow, like you said, those jobs to be reallocated, the alternatives to come in, the how they're going to manage like I was chatting to a guy who lives down in the bog and the bog of Allen, and so their plan, Bord na Móna's plan, is to undrain the bogs, basically to undo the work that was done 50, 60 years ago, is to fill in all the drainage channels and re-flood the bog. But he's kind of saying it's not going to work. The way they did these drains years ago, it's not going to be an easy process. Like,
it's not going to work. And I do honestly believe that there's a greater plan to put more wind turbines into it. And it's another area that, will end up being a dumping ground for wind turbines, like some of the companies that are coming over here from, Sweden and Netherlands across there and are putting in wind farms here. They're not putting them in their own country, and I think we'll end up that them bogs will end up another area where you'll have
to put solar on them.
That's
another thing. That's another day's kind of talking now. In fairness, I don't understand them putting all these wind farms inland where they should be putting them in uninhabited areas.
Right to see, but as you said, that's another day's. Yeah, there's another day in that. But going back to the compost, I think that anyone listening in should definitely think about doing. If you're not composting, start off the way I'm doing it. Even just gather your garden waste and go from there. It's easily turned, and you can, like I even put, all my hedge clippings and all of that into it. You can. Branches, if you have, you can break them up, and I put the whole lot in and just leave it there.
A good tip is, like Michael said, is the smaller you break it up with your clippings of your hedge, your shrubby material, the smaller you can break that up of. So if you put that into a compost heap and get your hedge trimmer or your garden shears and just chop it up smaller. You get that stuff as small as possible, it's going to break down a lot quicker. The more woody stuff is going to be very, very slow. But yeah, that's if you were only looking to come to compost straight away, I'd be looking at doing it garden waste only, and
some of the blends you can get, the likes of the John Innes stuff and all of that, you know, that's a whole other, because you can get clays.
There's some soil, they are expensive, but look, there's alternatives out there. But so that kind of sums up what the podcast today. It's strange doing it in person, but
yeah, it's nice to do it in person though, and it's good to be back at it. And we're sorry we haven't been around, but you know, make sure to pop over to our social media pages and
so
share them around.
As of last week, I think we have listeners in 10 countries from around the world. So thank you to everybody who's tuning in and listening, and let us know of a topic if you want us to talk about it. Like anything. We'll chat about anything within the confines of horticulture, and we'll happily discuss it wherever you may be. Yeah, talk about anything.
For 40 minutes if you want us to. We'll do it.
So I think next week we've been both dealing with something that's hitting here in Ireland in particular is the ash dieback. It's very topical at the moment. You might see it with the trees dying back in the sides of the road. So I think next week we might talk about ash dieback. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, because I was only looking at my own road the other day, and it's ash and what was left of some elms along it. So
it's a huge problem. So tune in next week, and we'll be chatting about ash dieback. So thanks for listening, and we'll chat to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you then.